Well, I think it's almost something they could gamify. That sounds strange coming from a tech person, doesn't it?
Oh no, I'm a big fan of. I would often say it's like, oh, you do want to reward the behaviour, so it's like you can
Yes,
have a bit of a competition. It's like, and then we're going to have a
yes.
pizza party. Welcome to the People in Legal podcast, and this is the Law and Beyond show, where we talk about everything there is in this expanding legal universe that is law, technology and compliance, and academia. And I am your host, Chantal McNaught. I'm a PhD researcher researching how lawyers navigate the conflicts between law as a profession and law as a business. I also author the fully innovative luxury lawyer newsletter on LinkedIn, and I am the Director of Ethics and AI Practices at 43 Below. And today's a special episode as we are meeting here at Bond University Brisbane campus and speaking with Jenn Little. Jenn Little is the founder and managing director of Insource, an AI-powered talent intelligence platform built for Australian and New Zealand law firms. Jenn's background is in specialist legal headhunting, and she has recognised the challenges posed by rising costs, firm competition, and the shrinking talent pool in small to medium-sized law firms. So that's when Jenn created Insource to solve these challenges by bringing the recruitment function in-house, saving time and the costs compared to traditional legal recruitment. And when Jenn isn't creating solutions that can save more than $2 million in recruitment costs for law firms, Jenn is an accomplished opera singer and gives back by serving as trustee of the Wellington Opera Trust. Insource are a valued sponsor partner of People in Legal, and Jenn in particular has been an immense support for me professionally. And this is a special episode brought to you in partnership with Insource and Novum Global. Welcome in person to the show, Jenn.
Thanks, Chantal. I mean, what a stunning day. I feel like we're on top of the world.
I know,
This morning.
Level 26, top floor. So could you please tell us a little bit more about how you got into the technology of legal recruitment?
Well, it was not something that I set out to do. So I was a headhunter for a long time, having worked in law firms previously. And I really set about to solve a problem in my own business as a headhunter, because back in the day, post the GFC, there was a growing talent shortage of lawyers. And, there was this huge demand for lawyers and just a real lack of supply of them. And I could only see what was visible in terms of the lawyers that were actively looking for jobs, and the quality was lacking in that part of the market. So I set about putting the legal profession at my fingertips to solve that problem. And I used the technology in my business over the next sort of 3 years and placed more than, I think it was 160 odd lawyers into law firms. But it really enabled me to turn around research lists more quickly, to turn over every stone, to uncover, a full part of whatever part of the market I needed to map for my clients. I was able to do that much, much more quickly. And then I really decided that it was time to give this to the law firms. And, they were still really struggling. They were completely dependent on recruiters. So the fees were really high.
Yeah.
There was a lack of transparency in terms of, being able to see the full breadth of what was available. And so I decided that it was time to put the power and control of recruitment in their hands, give them access to a tool that could reduce their time to hire and the cost to hire, and ultimately give them access to better quality talent, because you can't hire what you can't see. So
Yeah. That is a really fantastic story, because it goes to the heart of what Tony Favell talks about in his book Build, about making sure you build painkillers, not vitamins. And the fact that you had for 3 years tried and tested this technology within your own practice before sharing it with others, which is so kind.
Yeah. I mean, we were the beta, really, our own beta.
So I reckon from that that experience, though, you would have seen quite a lot, and I'm wondering what you have identified as some of the biggest mistakes that law firm leaders are making right now when it comes to attracting and retaining that legal talent.
Mhm. Look, I think the first one is that they are still on the back foot. So they are applying an old model that hasn't fundamentally changed in 30 years. So, and that model is that they recruit only after they've received a resignation, or perhaps there is a new client and there needs to be more resource in the team. And that's when we see them go to the market.
So it's only reactive instead
Very
of
reactive.
And what about, I saw a post, I think, on one of the various Facebook groups that are out there around succession planning as well. And is that something that you see in those reaction trends of, oh, well, I want to retire in 3 years now, instead of actually thinking about how long that process would take for their succession?
Absolutely, Chantal. And it wasn't long ago I had a firm call me to have this very discussion about a partner that's retiring next year.
My goodness.
So very reactive. And, in this market, where lawyers are not and top quality performers are not moving on demand anymore, that's something that really needs to fundamentally shift. I think succession gaps are just not being looked at early enough.
How early do they need to be looked at?
Oh, at least 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5. All right,
Yes.
lock that in.
Yes.
3 to 5, that's your plan.
Yeah, and I think it's not just at the partner level either, it's right through their structure. So if you've got a couple of lawyers at that sort of 3 to 5 year PAE, and then the next sort of grouping is at the sort of the 1 to 2, so there's sort of that gap between that 3 to 5. If you lost both of those lawyers, one only needs to go on parental leave, the other only needs to go on their OE, and suddenly you've got this gap that you can't.
Yeah, and then that's
What do you
how
do?
partners and directors end up doing a lot of the legal work instead of leading the business.
Yes, and I think, what's happening in the trends that we're seeing out there at the moment is that there is this lack of capacity then when the team has to pick up that workload as well. And that's obviously leading to other things. What's burnout, but it's also about being able to service your clients as well and give them the exceptional service that they're expecting.
Yeah. Wow. And I guess there's a lot of content as well that you and Insource produce that is really, really helpful. So I find it every time I see you on LinkedIn, I learn something about legal talent, and then I go, oh yeah, there's this very big knowledge base here. And you had mentioned about hiring from the shallowest end of the talent pool. What does that mean?
Well, I think often firms will say, that there's a shortage of talent. And we had this happen in New Zealand recently. In fact, I saw an article that was published in the Herald. 3 law firms in Tauranga had put out there that they were struggling to hire lawyers, and that there was a shortage of lawyers looking to come to Tauranga. And the data...
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's like this.
Yes.
But I think, what the data showed me in Insource was a completely different picture. So when I looked at the talent that had a connection to those 3 firms, that were either alumni or they had previously worked with somebody that was currently working at those 3 firms that were outside of Tauranga, that was quite an enormous number of lawyers.
Right.
So, they were sitting on this amazing talent pool, but it was just completely invisible to them because they can only see what's actively looking, and that's the smallest part of the market right now. So, I was at Altma last year, and the practice managers in September were saying it's not just a shortage of lawyers, but it's a shortage of quality lawyers. It's a shortage of quality lawyers in the pool that is actively looking, because today, top performers are not on job boards. In fact, Seek had they've had a decline in their number of adverts in the last 12 months, and that was published in December. Um, but I think it's just fascinating that the firms still see recruiters and job boards as the market, and it's the smallest part of the market, those people that are actively looking.
Really fascinating point. So, do you think that just with that whole correlation of Seek not having as many, like, there's a decline there of listings. So like we all automatically think, oh well, there's fewer jobs available, but then the ENIC data, the conversations with the firms are saying like, oh no, we are so desperate, but the job seeking, the listings are not working as a process. And then, as you pointed out, the people who might be looking to make a change are not necessarily actively looking; they're more waiting to have conversations. Is this going, like, do you feel like there's this trend more towards relationship building when it comes to like the whole job market? Are we at a point of disruption here?
Absolutely. I think, it's turned itself on its head. Previously you started the hiring process post resignation. Today, recruitment has to be always on, a little and often. And it's collaborative and it's leadership led, and it's got to be much like doing your business development in a law firm.
Okay.
Everyone's in the wheelhouse.
Part of it.
Yes, and I think, it doesn't matter whether you're at an event with 50 other lawyers or you're on the other side of a transaction, you're sharing that information about great lawyers that you've been talking to, that you've met with, that and to really be able to make those connection points visible.
You mentioned collaboration and making it part of the business system. That sounds like a really big shift for a lot of law firm leaders. So, can you share what these law firm leaders need to unlearn about recruitment? What are these old, like, traditional old wives' tales that we're still clinging in on, and what does the data say to support some of the decisions?
Yeah. So I think there's lots to unpack in that, Chantal. I think when you look at it, hiring reactively today guarantees long hiring cycles. That's the first thing. It's also really expensive. Agency fees are up around 25% of a single hire. So that, at the senior end can be as much as $65,000 for a single hire in agency fees, compared to, say, an insource subscription, which, for firms with less than 20 lawyers is just over $7,000 annually, and they can hire as many lawyers as they want through that platform. So, it's enormous. I mean, it would take over 100 hours just to recoup that sort of cost. So it's interesting just to see that, firms are still putting themselves through this pain, and they haven't yet adjusted to the new way, which is proactive, always on, and being able to really be strategic about their hiring. And I think having access to good data really helps with that, and it's only when you can access good data that suddenly some of those mind shifts can happen as well, because they actually see it for what it is, and they can start to measure, how long is it taking us to fill roles? How many roles have we paid recruitment agency fees for this year, perhaps unnecessarily?
Yeah, and then it can also help alleviate that whole the compulsion to do decisions by gut feel. And, I speak on this show a lot about ethics because my thesis is very much ethics based, but how I view ethics is it is a resource for decision making.
Absolutely.
And so when you have data to draw on, so you can reassure yourself about like what are the options for your decision, then it becomes less of a, oh, I just feel this and I feel that, and it's more of
Yes, I think those days of assumptions need to move or be removed. I mean, they're really limiting themselves to the smallest part of the market, and I think exposing themselves to recruitment technology tools today, like InSource that can give them access to, the complete talent pool of professional lawyers, enables them to see that part of the market that is willing to move for the right opportunity, but these people are not on job boards and they're not talking to recruiters. And so to be able to connect with those people, it really does become about who you know and those wider connections as well. I mean, it's not just about people who have previously worked together or who are alumni of the firm. It can be, your support staff may live next door to a really great lawyer, or
Yeah.
maybe there's a lawyer that's has a brother or sister-in-law that they could recommend.
Well, you say that because I have a friend in legal tech that works at a practice management software, and she recently moved, and her street are full of lawyers. So like we do collect in places, and this is some of the things that you've highlighted already have been around the shifts of trends that those that are on the looking at the job boards as lawyers aren't necessarily the highest quality. They're not necessarily going to be the ones that would be a perfect match, that it is fast becoming an outdated matching model, which means that things are breaking down, and we're constantly hearing in the legal media around how difficult it is to attract and retain talent, and that has been a consistent complaint since I was admitted over 13 years ago. So when as this continues, what are the real consequences for law firms though if they don't adapt now that there's like a new way, there's another way, which I think is quite exciting, and it's a positive disruption to go, well, you don't have to do it the job listing way, that you can proactively look for the talent and look at data now. We have the technology, we have the means. But what are the consequences for firms that don't engage?
Well, I think it's about being competitive or lack of competitiveness, really. I think to remain competitive today, you have to be proactive about your recruitment and take that always-on approach to recruitment. If you don't, you're going to be left behind. While you're managing a really long recruitment process and sitting there waiting for applicants, waiting for recruiters, the leading firms out there have already been proactive and have a shortlist that they're already progressing through their recruitment process. So they're grabbing, the best talent because they've been cultivating those relationships for months, maybe even years, to build out that warm pool of talent. They already know who's on their shortlist because they have already determined whether those lawyers would be interested in working for their firm in the future and what their timeframes might look like to move.
And that doesn't have to be something that we would envision, the top tier or the really large firms where they have a recruitment role that's their job. It could quite literally be if there's a principal and a team of staff, lawyers, where the principal can be like part of that process on having coffees with other lawyers. It could it be paired with the business development side of things as well, in building those relationships with, you work for a firm that does similar stuff but in a different type of area or a different industry to our client's industry. Let's catch up over a beverage or a meal, and building that. And that could also be part of the recruitment.
Absolutely. And it's everybody's job now. I think in the past, it's always been seen very operationally. That's a people issue that sits with HR. It's no longer a back office function. Recruitment is something that everybody has connections and networks. And so it's leveraging those. It's being able to tap into the talent that's offshore, that's looking to return to Australia or New Zealand. Have you spoken to your alumni in the last 12 months? The people that you trained that went really well in the firm that you would like to see come back. It's incredible how many firms, lose touch touch with their alumni.
It's so great that you mentioned that, because I remember visiting a firm in Blenheim where they had, at the time that I was visiting, they had a morning tea for one of their alumni that was quite literally returning from Australia after 28 years. And she had worked at that firm long before that, and then there was just a welcome back to Blenheim. So,
Yeah.
so is that the sort of stuff that you're talking about?
Absolutely. And I think particularly for those regional areas in Australia and New Zealand, even being able to connect with lawyers that went to college there, that grew up there, that probably still have family connections there. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised, how many connections exist outside of the state that would look to come back in the future.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, we're going to pivot a little bit because, I love the data stuff, and where I feel there could be a little bit of pain point for the law firm leaders, just from my own experience with, helping firms with reports and that kind of thing, is around data literacy and the curiosity piece. It's really interesting how we rush, and where it's May when we're recording this, so we're really in Australia. We're seeing some of the pressure on the lead up to 30 June, which is the financial year here in Australia. So, do you have any practical steps that you can share about what today's leaders could build on their capabilities when it comes to data literacy, so they can make those more informed hiring decisions, but also build a little bit of that curiosity mindset rather than the reactive, we just have to get it done mindset?
Absolutely. And I mean, our customers constantly tell us that Insource is their source of truth about the movement and composition of talent. So they're constantly monitoring the hires, the leavers, the tenure, looking and benchmarking that with their competitors, headcount, who's growing out there across our competitors, who's growing or had the most leavers in our market. Does that look like currently? I think being able to have that information at your fingertips really sets you up for success. I think otherwise you're operating in the dark. And I think too, data lets you start to monitor and measure success. So again, recruitment needs to be seen today as something that's strategic. You see your other areas in your firm of your operations as strategic, and recruitment's no different. So I think, being able to sort of understand how long is it taking for us to fill roles, that measuring these things is just so important.
And when you're saying that, I was like, oh my goodness. So what you're saying with the firms with Insource is that data can be fun.
It's completely fun. I mean, you want to be, the whole idea is that you want to see and know what your competitors are doing, right? And to know this.
What are they doing?
Fear of missing out. And what are they doing that we're not thinking about yet? Or, where are they having success in the market? Where have they hired? If they've hired 10 or 20 lawyers this year, where are they actually hiring those lawyers from? Are they coming back into the Australian market? Are they moving locally? Are they coming from that mid-market, from the firms with 100 to 200 lawyer headcount? Where is that movement? Where should we be focusing our attention and time in terms of our sourcing strategy?
I think that, and it sounds like in of itself it's quite rewarding. But what are some of the other mechanisms that leaders can use to make it rewarding, to encourage the whole team to get in on the recruitment bandwagon to help the firms, continue to do excellent work for clients?
Well, I think it's almost something they could gamify. That sounds strange coming from a tech person, doesn't it?
No, I'm a big fan of, I would often say, it's like, oh, do you want to reward the behavior? So it's like you can
Yes.
have a bit of a competition. It's like, and then we're going to have a
Yes.
pizza party.
Yeah. And I think, today, I mean, with the cost of living crisis as well,
Yeah.
everyone's looking to achieve something, whether it's buying that new car or having that family holiday or paying a bit down on the mortgage. And if there was a way for them to be able to do that and see those connections and help to leverage those connections for the firm, then I think everyone's winning, and it's still going to be saving the firms thousands versus, the time lost in the recruitment, doing it reactively, the cost of hiring through a recruiter, possibly even the loss of clients because they're unable to service them, they don't have capacity, or customers are just, they're feeling unsupported and unloved and looking for a new home to service their needs.
Yeah. Yeah, incentives are so important, and they're very personal, but they don't have to be difficult, and they don't have to, and they certainly shouldn't be one size fits all. Okay, so looking ahead in this bright, beautiful future that we can see, what do you think will separate the law firms that thrive within this legal talent market and those that are at risk of being left behind?
So I think those that will thrive will be the ones cultivating pipelines of talent for their future hiring needs. They will support this with good recruitment technology that can help manage that process and also identify the talent to them and give them really good insights about what is happening across the movement and composition of lawyers and talent in the market. And they'll really bring it in-house in a strategic way. So, this will be strategically leadership-led. It's certainly not going to be a reactive back office, operational level function in the future.
Well, thank you. And to save our audience, I didn't bring my conversation cards, which I do with all of my guests. So instead, I'm just going to ask you a question about Brisbane. What's one thing that surprised you about this beautiful river city?
I think it's just the lifestyle that you have here. You don't have daylight saving, which I absolutely love, by the way. I think it's fabulous that you can get up with the sun in the morning and, you can go to bed at a reasonable time. And I just love that it just feels really healthy.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's been fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chantal.
You've been listening to the Law and Beyond show on the People in Legal podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing so you have notifications and it helps our audience find us. You can also find us on LinkedIn at People in Legal, and consider following me, Chantal McNaught, on LinkedIn to get your copy of the fully innovative luxury lawyer newsletter. And see you in the next episode.